It's Sarah, and welcome to my crochet channel. Today's video, I'm going to show you how to make the Christmas Lights Headband. It's super fun to make, super fun to wear, and they're the perfect prop for your Christmas and holiday photos. And the neat thing about this pattern is it will work for any size head, to the teeny tiny head, to the big melon head. It doesn't matter because the pattern is completely adjustable. And we'll talk more about that as we get along. Oh, and you can also make this into a collar for your dog or your cat so they can get in on the holiday photo as well. Now this is a free crochet pattern on my blog, and you can find that blog link down in the notes underneath this video. Okay, let's talk supplies. The first thing you're going to need is some sort of a tape measure because it's a good idea to know the size of the head you're making the headband for. And I'll talk more about that as we get along. You're going to need a needle for stitching on the wire and the lights, and also weaving in your ends. And we're going to be stitching today with our eye hook. Now my eye hook is a 5.25 millimeter crochet hook. I know that a lot of the boy, and this is a boy also, crochet hooks have changed their measurements. If your eye hook is a 5.50, that will work also. Just make sure that you match the size that you need. It's not a really big deal in this pattern for that small amount of difference. That's where the tape measure comes in handy. All right, now let's talk yarn. This yarn here is Silver Sparkle, and it's the Caron Simply Soft and Party in Silver. This green one is also Caron Simply Soft, and it's called Spring Sparkle. And I like the color of it. To me, it was like a lighter pine tree. And you can use any worsted weight number 4 yarns for this project. For today's project, I'm going to be using the white sparkle. And this is, I love this yarn from Hobby Lobby. It's their off-white color. And I'm choosing to go with the off-white just because the white is just too bright for videoing. I like to go with the sparkled yarn for this project, but you don't have to. You can use any worsted weight number 4 yarn that you have on hand. You're not going to need very much, maybe an ounce, ounce and a half, depending on the head size that you're making. And you don't have to use sparkle, like I said. I just really like it for this project. You're also going to need some worsted weight number 4 black, and that's just to make the wire that looks like it's holding all the lights together. Now, if you would rather use a light gray or a green or some other color, that's fine. And then you're going to need some bright variegated yarn. Although you don't have to, you could use pieces of other yarn for your lights. I really like using this. This is the Red Heart Super Saver in Fiesta. It's bright colors. They also have some other variegated ones that are in neons that would be beautiful as well. And the reason I like to use a variegated is because when I'm stitching the lights, I kind of go off and on, and then I turn and fill in trying to get more colors of lights. This one I had more purples and blues, and this one I had a little bit more yellows. And so you get random bright colors throughout. Now, as far as the headband itself, I really think you should stick with a solid color. Any color, just a solid color. That way your variegated and bright lights will stick out. But if you want to do it in a variegated and use a solid, I just don't think the lights would show up enough. You can do an experiment and test it out for yourself and see what colors you like best. The headband measures 3 inches across, and if you want to make it wider, you can just add as many stitches as you want to, and then 2 rows of the half double crochet equal 1 inch. And if you make the headband the size that I'm making today in our video, it's going to be a 20-inch headband. And the thing about the 20-inch headband is they're very stretchy and they can fit up to about a 22-inch head. So keep that in mind when you're adjusting your pattern. And the way that you will adjust it, like I said, 2 rows equal 1 inch. So you can add or subtract as many rows as needed for the headband size that you're making. In other words, I'm making a 20-inch headband. So my headband's going to be 40 rows because 2 rows of the half double crochet equal 1 inch. All right, let's get started making our headband. We're going to begin with a slip knot, and then we're going to chain 11 stitches. Now make sure you chain these 11 chains loosely because at the end we're going to be joining the 2 ends together, and you don't want one end to be puckered up. All right, there's my 11 chains. We're going to begin by placing a half double crochet and the second chain from the hook. Yarn over, go in that second chain and pull up a loop. You'll have 3 loops on your hook. Yarn over and just pull that loop through all 3 of the loops on your hook. That's a half double crochet. We're going to stitch a half double crochet in each of the chains across. And if you haven't done half double crochets very often, this is a great project to practice because the entire headband is stitched in half double crochet rows. I've half double crocheted in each chain across. And because we began in the second chain from the hook, and we began with 11 chains, we have 10 half double crochets. We're going to chain 1 and turn. Our chain 1 does not count as a stitch. It's merely a turning chain. All right, now for row 2, we're going to be stitching 1 half double crochet and each half double crochet across, but we're going to be stitching in the back loops only. So if you look at your work, you'll see there are loops on this side and loops on the back side. We're going to be stitching in those back ones. The loops that are on the front are called the front loops. They're the loops that are facing you. The loops that are on the back are the loops that are facing away. So yarn over, go right in that first stitch and stitch a half double crochet. And we'll do this all the way across, and what you'll see is a little ridge. Let me do a couple more stitches here. And see how that makes a little ridge right there? That's exactly the way we want it to look. So we'll stitch 1 half double crochet in each of the 10 half double crochets. I've completed that second row, stitching 1 half double crochet in each half double crochet, stitching in the back loops only. And again, we have 10 half double crochets. Now for row 3, we're going to do the exact same thing. Chain 1, turn, and stitch 1 half double crochet in each of the half double crochets. There we go. Stitching in the back loops only. And by stitching the headband in the back loops only, that's where we get, for some reason, a much stretchier headband than if we just stitched it regular. Plus, it makes a nice textured look. All right, so there's our third row. Chain 1 and turn. Now, if you are making the headband in the adult size, which is the 20-inch, you're going to need to repeat this row through row 40. Chain 1, turn, stitch 1/2 double crochet in each of the back loops of the next row. Chain 1, repeat, and you'll need to do that for 40 rows. Now, if you're making it smaller, remember, 2 rows equal approximately 1 inch. And so you'll need to adjust that for whatever head size that you are making. 2 rows equal 1 inch. So since I'm making a 20-inch headband, I need to continue to repeat through row 40. I have now stitched my 40 rows for my headband. And when you stitch as many rows as needed, and I recommend you stitch them in increments of 2, we're going to cut our yarn. But we want to leave enough yarn so we can slip stitch it together at the end. And I'm going to say approximately 18 to 24 inches. It's okay to have too much yarn left over, but it's not okay not to have enough. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and tie that off. And now my headband is ready to add the Christmas lights. You're probably wondering which is the front and which is the back of the headband. But as you see, the way that we stitched it, stitching in those back loops, it looks the same on the front as it does on the back. So you can choose which side you think works best. We're going to stitch the wire for our lights first. And so what I do is I go to one side, one end, it doesn't matter, and I count up 10 rows. So here's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. And that's where I begin with bringing up my black yarn. And you need to thread onto a yarn needle approximately 18 to 24 inches. And it might be a little clumsy to work with at first, but I would rather, again, have too much yarn on my needle than have to add more to it. And I like to start up 10 inches, and then I'll, or 10, not 10 inches, 10 rows, because I like to do it on both ends also, because that way when you're done, the lights are only on the front, and you still have lots of extra stretchy on the end that you don't have to worry about. It's a little tricky on this part because you want to make sure that you stitch loose enough so that your headband still has stretch, but not too tight that it like droops and gapes, okay? So I've threaded my black yarn that I'm using for the wire on my needle. I came up on that 11th row, and I'm leaving a good sized tail, about 4 or 5 inches on the back. And so what I like to do is I like to sort of zigzag, and I'm zigzagging every other row, and usually it's my top row where my ridge is. And it's up to you how much zigzaggy you want to put in it. And so what I do is I'm going to go this way, and then I'm going to come up this way over here. And what we're going to do is we're going to move down the headband and then back up. So you'll have spaces until we're done. Like on this one, I'm just going to go straight, and then I'm going to zigzag over. And you can see I'm doing every 2 rows. Okay. Now I'm going to come up a little and then go down. And it's really just random. There isn't any set way that you have to do this. Okay. All right, I'm going to go ahead and go down here and then come back over here. Now, before I finish this part, I want to make sure I have my 10 rows marked. So here's 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I'm right here to my 10th row over here. So I'm going to go this way and then this way, and that brings me to that 10th row. Now, if you made your headband longer and you want to have more edge that doesn't have the lights on it, you can do that. Or if you want to have it go all the way to the end, you can. I just like doing it this way. I think it works good for me. All right, so now I'm going to come back the way I came. And so I'll go right back in those stitches. And I'll come right back up, working along where I came. And make sure I still have a little bit of stitch, but my black wire portion isn't gaping. Because we want it to look pretty when we wear it, right? All right, there we go. And you may have to move your stitches along, or your thread along a little bit. All right, we came out there, so we're going to go in there. And the reason I do it this way, I go down one way then back, is it makes the back a little bit neater than if I had to weave it in on both ends. All right, let me move this up so you can see. Get that through. Turn it a little. And that's what it looks like. It's just kind of a wavy line randomly. Let me pull that a little more because that is gaping a little. We'll pull it from the back. There we go. See how that looks? It just looks like Christmas light wire. Kind of looks kind of pretty by itself, doesn't it? All right, so now we're going to go to the back. All right, and I'm going to do something you're not supposed to do when you crochet. I'm going to tie a knot. And I do that on this one, and I'm also going to do it on the lights because I don't want to weave this black in to my white because I don't want it accidentally showing through. And so I'll tie 3 knots like that. And if you feel like that's not going to hold, you can always dab that with a bit of fabric glue or SAch. I don't recommend using hot glue since you're going to be having that against your head. All right, that's how we do the wire for the Christmas lights. Now it's time to add our lights. And what I did is I just cut a piece of my bright yarn that's variegated, and like I said, you can do them all one color, you can use Christmas colors, anything that you want. It's your headband, you can do whatever colors that you like. I just think it works really good with the variegated because you get a couple of different colors in there. All right, so what we're going to do is I cut about a 24-inch piece of yarn and then I threaded it on my needle. And we're going to go up right where we started. And we're going to leave a little bit of a tail back there so we have something to work with. And what I do is I go through and randomly make the lights about every other, and then I'm going to come down here and I'm going to turn around and I'll make the lights going the other direction. That way we end at the same end like we did with the light wire. All right, so the way we make the Christmas light is we count up 2, 1, 2, and we just go in. There's 1, and then I like to try to go right next to it and maybe in the fiber so that we're not going right back in the same hole. And you leave it a little bloopy, if that's a word, and you just do 2 stitches like that. All right, then we're going to go to the back, and I like to go across that stitch in the back, and that just helps it stay put. All right, and now we're going to skip this and go over here. Alrighty, and we'll gently pull that up. There we go. And we're going to keep the lights on this side going the same direction. So we're going to count up 2. And then I'm going to go right next to it in the fiber of the stitch next to it. I'm going to turn it over, and I'm just going to I'm going through, I just want to make sure you can see, I am going through the stitch on the back of the headband, going around that loop. Oops. There we go. And it just helps it hold, make sure this string across here isn't too droopy. And you can also, if you feel better, go through the back of these stitches right here if you want to, if you feel like it's too droopy. And I'll show you how to do that on this one. All right, so we're going to skip this and go to the next one. All right, and if you want to go through those stitches, you can just go through the back right here. The main thing about that is make sure that you check to make sure they're not showing through on this side. All right? All right, so now we're back here to the next one, and you'll notice we're making them all go this direction. When we get to this end and come back, they're all going to go the other direction. All right? Here we go. Now it's changed to green, and I'm going to go up 2 stitches, make a loop, then I'm going to go in that fiber right next to it. I'm going to turn it over. I'm going to go through and make a loop. And you'll continue to do that on the next few, or skip this one, do this one, skip this one, do this one, skip this one, and do this one. So once I got to this end, I turned around and I did exactly the same thing, only coming back this way, and I made all the lights come the other direction. And you can see how that variegated yarn gave us some different colored lights. Now I want to show you the back. We moved back along here, and as I went, I tried to wrap my colors around the black so that it would help it stay in place. All right? And then when we got back to the beginning, we tied the knots just like we did on the black one. Now, again, if you feel uncomfortable that your knots are not going to hold here, you can add a dab of SAch or fabric glue on those, and it'll keep those from coming undone. Just remember, the fabric glue can be a little bit hard if you want that against your head. Think about that. That's why I don't really like to use hot glue, because it can get icky in your hair. That's the main reason I just tie the knots. I make sure it's nice and stretchy, and that as it's worn, it can be stretched a little bit. So the last thing we need to do is put the ends together. Put the ends together to make it into our headband. We're going to put the 2 ends together with the right side out. We're going to come over here to our last stitch on this, our first stitch on this side, and our first stitch on this side, and here's that yarn that we tied off with that we left that nice long tail. We'll pull through both sides, and we'll do a little chain 1 to bring it to the top. And then what we'll do is we'll just stitch slip stitches across, going through both sides and sewing it together. And again, remember, you don't want this to be too tight. You don't want one end puckering up on you and not looking neat and tidy. And this is what I was talking about when I said don't stitch that initial chain too tight. If it's too tight and it doesn't fit, everything gets puckered. All right? Just a little tip I learned. Just stitching slip stitches across, sewing the end of our headband together. All right, so I do have too much yarn, but I don't mind having too much yarn. I would rather at the end of a project have too much yarn than not enough. All right, so we cut that, and now we're going to grab our needle, and we're just going to weave that end in. We'll just go here to the inside of our work and go right in there. Go one way, go up a few stitches, going through fibers and stitches if possible, and then back down, and then clip our string. And now our headband is complete. So now I have 3 choices of which headband with Christmas lights I want to wear. I think I better make a red one too, to go with my Christmas sweater.